Rise Extra on a Monday, and this Monday is also known as International Women's Day. So we kicked Hill out of the Foursquare box, and we bring in Lee Ann Moyer, who is owner of Portland Mom Collective, to talk about International Women's Day. And she has some really wonderful anecdotes because, Lee Ann, you have, as I was telling you, a pretty impressive resume. She's a mom of 4 kids. She's a writer. She owns 3 businesses.
Wow.
All the kids are at home doing school, and you're juggling everything, spinning plates, my husband likes to call it. So thank you for getting up early with us if you already weren't up. And,
it's my pleasure.
Yeah, kind of tick through a little bit of what Portland Mom Collective is and some of what you guys kind of share and write about.
Portland Mom Collective is a website and community for local parents. We talk about just raising kids in Portland. We have 15, 20 writers at any given time, and we just share our experiences and things we like to do. It's been a really interesting experience this year because we have a lot to say, and parenthood has looked really different this year.
Oh, isn't that the truth? My jaw dropped when I heard that you have 4 kids and 3 jobs. How does all that work? Can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Sure, yeah. So I own and run Portland Mom Collective, which I can do completely from home, mostly. I mean, now, definitely, but even beforehand, it was pretty much a virtual experience. So I'm able to keep doing that. I also own a workshop space in North Portland called Make and Take Studio, but that has been closed. So I do have that business, but I have not been doing that work recently. And then I have always been a freelance writer, so I also have a business doing that.
Lee Ann, can you give us an idea of how old your kids are? Because I know the parenting is a different experience. Like Nina's right now has a 3-year-old. Mine are 13. Brenda's are a little older than that. I'll just put it that way.
They're adults.
They're adults. And so everyone's parental experience is different depending on how old their kids are. So I'm just curious about yours.
Yeah, so my oldest is 13. And then I have a 7-year-old, a 9-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 4-year-old.
Oh my God.
So yeah, we've got a wide range.
So Nina can relate to your, she can relate to you raising your youngest, and I can relate to you raising your oldest.
Right, and the 3 oldest ones are all in virtual school right now, but the youngest one was in a preschool program, but we took her out of the program.
Can I ask you then, following up on that, just about that whole, the school experience for the last 12 months or so. What to you has been a benefit of the kids learning from home? What has been the real struggle of the kids learning from home?
Oh, wow. Such a question. So I think, let's say a benefit first, which is just we are having a lot more together time, and there's a lot more flexibility. We've been able to go away, for example. We went to the coast for a week and we did virtual school from the coast.
Yep.
Nice.
Just sort of doing the same thing, staying safe and social distancing, but doing it with a beautiful view. So we've been able to have some together time, but it's really challenging working, overseeing schoolwork, getting the kids to their classes. I mean, we've missed a handful of classes, and then having a little one on top of that who, she's pretty happy, but she needs a lot of attention and love and interaction. So just spinning all the plates, as you said, just keeping it all happening at once.
No kidding.
I'm telling you, parenting, I think, is the most humbling job that I've ever had under the best of circumstances. And then you add in the pandemic on top of that. I cannot tell you how many times I've said during this last year, I am so glad that my kids are adults and that we're not having to navigate this. So, my hat's off to everybody who is, because it is just mind-blowing, everything that you're up against. Can you talk about the women that are weighing in on Portland Mom Collective? Like, what are some of the things that they want to know? What are they talking about, in addition to what you've just mentioned? What are some of the big things that they are asking you?
Well, I think one of the biggest things I keep hearing over and over again is the problem of guilt, is just feeling like you're either not doing enough at work or at home, or just for yourself. There's a lot of pressure, and I mean, it sounds weird to say pressure for self-care, but a lot of the women I talked to said that they just felt like you can't do it all. So what gives? And maybe that changes, excuse me, maybe that changes from one day to the next, but it's just you're never enough. That's a really hard thing for a lot of mothers right now, I think.
So before the pandemic happened, women were making all of these gains in the workforce. There were more women working than men, first time in history. Then the pandemic happens. Kids in March, had to go to virtual school, so you had to figure that out. Then you had summertime, which is, kind of normal, like figuring out, but camps are closed and all the kids' activities that they normally can do. And then fall comes around and we're doing virtual school again. And so many women, I know I did this story in October too and interviewed several families. You have to sit down and have that discussion with your spouse or your partner or somebody and say, okay, who makes the most money, who has the most flexible schedule. Someone has to, we got to figure out who's staying home with the child in the house or where the kid is going to go to do virtual school. And so many women had to give up their dream jobs or their dream careers or put it on hold. And then, Brenda, as we were talking about, we saw in the story today, if a woman takes 1 year off from working, they drop down in salary by 39%.
That's a stunning number.
Which is huge. I mean, it's basically almost starting over. What kind of anecdotes you heard from local moms kind of who have had to make that really tough decision to quit working for a while?
Yeah, there's tons of them, just over and over again. Either taking time off or not going for a promotion or not, changing roles, doing something that's accommodating to, it sounds even funny to say it, right? But as accommodating as possible to our current situation. So it's just over and over and over again. And then there's also people who have just tried to make it work, but they just say, they feel like they're not able to. So are they performing as well as they want to in their roles? I mean, it's impossible. It's an almost impossible situation. On top of it, you were mentioning, the scramble of summertime and then the scramble of now we're back in virtual school, so we have to sit down and have this conversation. I think a lot of people who have young children who are now starting to go back into work because there's so much uncertainty about schooling. That's another scramble of, well, what's it going to look like in a few months? What's it going to look like in the fall? How do you plan your hours and coming up? So it's just a constant adjustment and a constant change for people. And I hear it over and over and over again.
Lee Ann Moyer is the founder. She's the head woman, the head mom behind Portland Mom Collective. I'm curious about a couple of things. One, how many moms make up this group, this collective about? And two, how many have you heard from this year who said, yes, I did give up my career, or I did give up my job because I had to stay home with the kids?
So we are about 15. It changes here and there, but around 15 writers throughout the year. And then we have a community of 5,000-6,000 on Facebook and followers on Instagram and so forth. So it's an open space for people to come and share their experience. And then as far as how many people,
well, yeah, if you're talking thousands of followers, you can't keep track of all of them. But I assume that you have heard from some who've talked about this very thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's all. I mean, it's very, very common, and the numbers reflect that. The data reflects that here and nationwide.
One of the things that I recall when my kids were in school and when they were little, when they were babies, is thank God for grandparents. And I know during the pandemic there's a much different dynamic because everybody needs to stay safe, but I don't know that I could have worked full time without the support of family. Grandparents on both my husband and my side. My mom actually lived in McMinnville, and when Zach, my oldest, he's 27 now, was born, his dad traveled a lot, and so my mom literally moved in with us for 8 weeks at a time.
Wow.
I mean, those are huge sacrifices that families make to support women who work and are trying to keep it all together. I know not everybody has that luxury, but boy, I have to give a shout out to my mom and the women in our family who stepped up and put some of their things aside to help me.
Absolutely.
On this International Women's Day, I mean, obviously not all women are mothers or want to be mothers. What kind of articles, are you guys working on or are getting a lot of clicks kind of on your website with women wanting information maybe about the pandemic or about working? I saw you guys have like a career section, right, on giving all kinds of tips and insight.
Yeah, and I think right now the most appreciated content is just really transparent stories about what motherhood looks like right now, because it looks so strange and confusing, and so hearing genuine stories from people about how they're getting through it, I think is the number one thing that our readers are reacting to. Historically, that wasn't always the case. Historically, a lot of the stuff that people were looking for was, top 10 kid-friendly restaurants in Portland or something,
right.
About where you can go and what you can do with your kids, right. And just sort of being out and about. But of course, we're out and about a whole lot less right now, and we also have a lot more feelings, logistics to navigate during this time. So it looks a little bit different, but that's kind of to be expected because everything looks different right now.
Yeah.
I am not a mom, as you probably guessed, Lee Ann, but I am a dad. I'm married to a woman who is a mom. And, something I noticed, I don't know what the question is here, but I will say something I've noticed since the time our kids started going to preschool till now, the present, as they're in middle school, there's almost this divide. And there's so many things in this country dividing us right now, but there has been this divide amongst the women that I see, the moms in our classrooms, where it's like you've got the group that is working, in many cases full-time, and then the group that are stay-at-home moms. And there's this judging going on. And I feel like, sometimes the working moms are made to feel guilty because they're not home as much with their kids, not helping with the homework, not doing this or that. And then the ones who are staying at home, sometimes they're made to feel guilty because they're not out earning a living. They're not a member of the workforce. And I don't have an answer.
That's a great point.
I don't have a question, but I'm wondering, is this a topic that you tackle a lot in your writings? Because I do feel like there is this great divide and a whole lot of judging going on in the community.
It's a guilt
by
and a
these two
shame
groups.
thing. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and that gets a little bit back to what I was saying earlier about the guilt of what we're doing right now. Is it just we're constantly feeling guilty in some way or another, thinking that we could serve our family better or differently. And the truth is you can't live multiple lives. So you have to do what's best for you and for your family. And you asked about if that's something that people are reacting to or read about, and definitely, it's a constant topic. So pandemic aside, as you mentioned, it was happening before all of this. It's just a constant mental juggle that we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Can you say more about self-compassion and women with other women being compassionate about those choices, whether they want to stay at home, whether they can afford to stay home, whether they have to work, want to work. But can you talk about how that is something I think that as women we all need to do more of?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something that I hear with our writers team too, that just sharing our genuine experience, because I think once you hear the reasoning behind things or the feelings behind things or just the true experience of somebody else, that judgment goes away. It's when we're just doing this, a comment in a Facebook group or something really quick and we don't really get to know the story behind somebody, that it's so much easier just to start those wars between, what's right and what's wrong. So I think that the question of it is more about taking the time to hear the other person's perspective or share your own perspective so that we all understand one another a little bit better.
I love our viewers are weighing in, Lee Ann, on Facebook, and Shannon Thompson has had some great comments this morning. She says, I was a stay-at-home mom with 3 kids in 2 years. I had to totally give up my career. Stay-at-home mom is still looked down on, but I hope the pandemic will give people a different look at stay-at-home parents. 20 years later, I'm now starting my career, and I'm so happy I had the time with my kids. You've got to probably hear those stories. Do you have any advice, or do you have any articles up about about women, maybe, you know, kids are now out of school and they're just jumping into the job market and how wacky it is right now with so many people looking for work, but starting a career kind of later?
Yeah, well, we were just talking about how we're going to sort of try to go into some of that. You know, it's funny because so much of our content was reacting to the changes, and so now we're starting to see sort of planning forward instead of just reacting. So some of that content is on the way, and we do have content about going back to the workforce pre-pandemic, but it looks different now. And hats off to Shannon for doing, after 20 years, jumping back into the workforce and in this environment. That's incredible.
Yeah. I was reading, like, even if you go for an interview and you're 50 and over, we're specifically saying, you can, like, interview questions now can sound like you would take offense to them, but you have to kind of switch answers of, like, they might ask, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And you can ask that question of a 20-year-old or a 50-year-old or whoever. But as a you know, 50 plus, you might be thinking, well, oh my God, like, how do I answer this? You know, they just want to know your intent with the company maybe, or with the job, and there was different ways to answer that. And like, you know, maybe some of the coworkers you're going to be working with are younger than you. Would you, you know, like, how do you kind of stand with that? Like, would you be able to take direction from someone younger than you? And this doesn't apply to just women, of course, but like people trying to get back in the workforce, and everything is just kind of different, you know, like no matter what age you're in, I guess, try to find a career.
Yeah, and I also think that the question of a gap of what if you took time off to raise your kids is a common.
What's a good way to
question.
answer that, or say, you know, like, explain that, or just say, hey, I was a mom, or I was a dad for however long.
Well, there is that as an answer, which should be a valid answer. I mean, as noted, it's the stay-at-home mom role has been overlooked or undervalued for ever, and hopefully that will change over time, especially given everything that has happened over the past year.
I'm going to share a comment here from Sabrina, who's watching it this morning. And really, I'm getting back to a topic I brought up earlier through Sabrina's comment. She says, we women need to stop judging each other, which I agree. You women do need to stop judging each other. And really, we all need to stop judging each other. She says, most of all, we need to stop judging ourselves. She says, as a mom, I constantly second guess whether I'm doing a good job. I think many others are having this same problem, whether they're working full-time, whether they're staying at home. We need to stop judging each other and stop judging ourselves. And it is true. Like I do see that all the time, and I feel like, man, if you could just shut off the thinking about what really other people think, you'd be far happier as a mom or a dad.
Yeah, how do we do that? That's the question.
Stop going on the internet, except for the Portland Moms Collective, of course.
I think it is like a social media thing, you know? Yeah. I mean, you see other posts from people, and they, you know, they seem like they have it all, and they're juggling it all just fine, and that's just one picture that was taken. You know, I was just telling Drew that my daughter, the little, you know, 3-year-old, she's in just the terrible threes, just totally ruined our day yesterday, just having a fit and being cranky and being a little stinker, as I like to call her. But, you know, and but then, you know, I took a picture of us. We were over in Bend the weekend. I took this great picture of her, and that was the 1 second she was like, you know, smiling and cute. The rest of the day she was a turd. And so it's just, you know, but people will see a picture like that and be like, oh wow, you know, they're doing this or something. I was like, no. I
tried to help you out, Nina. I don't know if it did, but when you told me that story, I immediately thought of all the times, and there are many where I felt like my two sons ruined our day. Yeah. And I would also, at times, I'd say to them, like, you're ruining our day. And then later I thought, geez, like, was that wrong to say to a 5-year-old or a 7-year-old or a 9-year-old? You're ruining our day. And then I thought, nah, they really were. But more importantly is when you hear other parents and you hear their struggles and you hear them like, oh, thank goodness, you said something, you know, something similar to I said, you then feel better about maybe the way you handled the situation. And I guess, Lee Ann, that's what your collective is all about, right? You see similar stories that help people through their parenting.
Yeah, that's the transparency part of it. Of, you know, it's not all rainbows and unicorns, as we like to say. And I do agree that the tendency to compare yourself to the perfect picture posted on Instagram or somewhere might be affecting our understanding of the reality of it.
Absolutely.
But I think those of us who are in the trenches, we all know that it doesn't always look like that, and can really relate to people who share their experiences saying the same.
Can you just dive into that a little bit more practically? Because we all doom scroll. You know, you get on whatever it is and you just get sucked into the rabbit hole. But do you have some practical tips about time on social media or anything, you know, that we could take away as families and as women about how much is too much?
Yeah, well, first I know somebody who's going to be writing something about completely turning off social media for as an experiment. So that can be an experiment anybody can do. Just try, you know, say a whole day or 3 whole days or a week, you know, whatever your timeline is, and see how it affects your mood or just your general thoughts about how your parenting is going. But also, I think that we all, I know that I have this experience, and others probably do too, where I know I hit a limit where it's not healthy or good on that particular day to still be doing the doom scrolling or you know, searching around on social media for whatever it might be. So I think that knowing what your limit is and respecting it is a very good first start. It's hard sometimes, I think, but especially for those of us who use it for professionally, but you do have to be mindful of the limits.
Lee Ann, how many hours of sleep do you average a night? I'm just curious.
You know,
Be honest.
That's like the second most common question about parenthood is like, how's sleep? I actually sleep pretty well, 7 hours, 8 hours. I get a good night's sleep. Yeah, I think that the sleeping difficulties ended when like the youngest one was over 2.
Yeah.
I feel like now they are pretty good about going to bed and getting up at a reasonable hour.
Yeah. We've got the 2 a.m. alarm clock that's impeding all of our sleep. So.
Not the kids.
That's a different problem.
Exactly.
With the little kids, it's hard. They make the call, right? So you just have to live with it.
Do either of you, Nina or Brenda, want to share any motherly advice to the viewers? Because I could share some, not that I'm a mom, but because I live with a really good one.
You know, my mom gave me the best advice that I'll ever hear. It landed with me. I knew it was true, and I have worked this crazy shift ever since because it was the best for my family. And my mom simply said, "You will never regret choosing your children." And I was like, whatever we have to do to make that happen, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, exactly.
And what I see happening for 13 years now, that like the key, it's probably one of a few keys, but for my wife, it's like her ability to talk to our kids. So, and I'm not as good at it as she is. If you can do that, if you can have real conversations with your kids, like ask them questions and listen to their answers, I think it's going to help a ton. And she works full time, so she's not staying at home right now. She would love to spend more time with them, but she's getting the quality time in. So that would be my advice to all moms. And I stink at it, so I'm not judging. But I'm saying if you can figure out a way to do it, talk to your kids and listen to your kids and have those good conversations.
Definitely. All right, Lee Ann Moyer with the Portland Mom Collective. You can find them on Facebook and online. A great website, tons of articles. Thank you so much for getting up early with us. We really appreciate it. And happy International Women's Day, everyone. We'll see you here tomorrow.